Hello, hello, and welcome to Asase, a podcast that honors oral tradition and shines a light on Ghanaian stories that are often untold or silenced. My name is Michelle, and my pronouns are she, her. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Asase. I am so happy to be back, and I'm excited for you to listen to this brand new episode. If you haven't checked it out, check out last week's 2 weeks ago's episode. That was season 5, episode 1, where I talked about indigenous knowledge and traditional education in Ghana. I'm proud of that episode. Yeah. Yeah. So check it out. I really want to know your thoughts, feedback, everything, all the things. So, yeah, check it out. And speaking of, there are multiple ways to support Asaseba. The first way is by sharing the podcast. Asaseba is on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at asasebapod. You can support by reposting, sharing on WhatsApp, telling your family, your friends, your network, your community, the whole world. Not the trolls. But yeah, tell your folks to listen and engage with the podcast. I love seeing your feedback, your commentary. Use the hashtag asasebapod. So that's ASASEBAPOD on social media so that I can see it and others can see it as well. You can also visit asaseba.com for curated resources on queer identities, spirituality, and cultural work. And you're also welcome to submit resources there as well. And it may just appear on the website. Another way to support is through monetary donations. I'm the sole producer, editor, planner, graphic designer, interviewer, etc., etc., etc. And I enjoy doing a podcast. Is, labor of love, passion project, but it's still work. And so if you want to support me as an indie creator, you can donate via email transfer for those in Canada. If you're outside of Canada, you can donate via PayPal. And the email for both those platforms, for both email transfer and PayPal, is asasebapod@gmail.com. So that's ASASEBAPOD@gmail.com. Okay, so this week we have an interview episode with a very, very special guest. Papa Kojo, pronouns he, him, they, them. Papa Kojo is an intersex and gender-nonconforming human rights activist based in Ghana. He currently volunteers as programs coordinator for Rightify Ghana, a human rights organization that focuses on platforming and documenting cases of abuse of members of the LGBTIQ community in Ghana. He also works as a freelance curator and documenter of the lives of queer people. He has specific interest in championing liberation, rights, and inclusion that leads to liberation of trans and intersex people across sub-Saharan Africa. Papa Kojo talks about some of the experiences of intersex people in Ghana, documenting queer elders, highlighting the most marginalized people within the LGBTQIA plus community, documenting queer joy, which we all love around here, and also their process for documenting queer people across Ghana. Giving a little something to my fellow cultural workers. I love hearing people's processes, so make sure to add that in there. It was such a great conversation. Now, on to the episode. Papa Kojo, welcome to Asaseba podcast. I'm really happy to have you here on the show today. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you. It's nice to be here. I am Papa Kojo Ampofo. I am a curator and activist in Ghana. My pronouns are he, him, they, them. I am intersex and gender non-conforming. I work with Rightify Ghana as a project coordinator, and I am also part of the executive committee for the Intersex Association of Ghana. And aside that, I also work solo, traveling around the country and documenting the lives and lived experiences of queer people.
Yes. And that's how I learned about you and your work, because I saw a post that you made on Twitter where you had interviewed a trans woman living in Ghana and you shared her experiences. And I was so happy to see that, because oftentimes I just haven't heard too many stories or experiences directly from, older queer folks, like Ghanaian
Mhm,
folks. So when I saw that,
mhm.
I'm like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And then I saw that you're going to make a series out of it. I'm like, this is perfect. Like, I feel like a lot of people need this. It's great to hear their stories. And so what has that experience been like for you to just talk to queer elders and document your stories?
I mean, and also thank you for telling me how you felt when you read the story. And I feel like this particular feeling that you are describing resonated with a lot of queer people, not only in Ghana, but around the world. And that was always the goal. Um, so personally, one of the reasons that I do this work and I love to do this is because of the personal validation that it comes with it, right? I think over the years we have and I when I say we, I don't mean queer people, but I mean the community in general, like have constructed queerness from a place of a lot of grief, right?
Mhm.
And there's always, so when I was growing up as a queer person, knowing that I was intersex and I didn't fit into any of these boxes, and I also had an attraction to men, there was this trauma around not growing old, right? And especially in this part where you don't hear or see queer elders, and everybody you see just looks like you. So then you ask yourself, like, where are the old people? And so this work is a huge personal validation for me, because like you sit down with an 86-year-old trans woman and she's sitting right in front of me. She's history, she has lived and she has survived and she's sitting here, which means I can too. So that is like a huge personal validation.
Yeah.
Apart from that too, I think there seem to be a lot of fulfillment from not just me, but the general queer community to hear something like that. There is a lot of fulfillment, and it's also, let me just say, refreshing, right? Because so many times, and I won't even say so many times, like all of the time, everything you hear about queerness in Ghana, and as a matter of fact, Africa, it's completely centered on abuse. This person has been killed here. This person has been, raped here. This person has been beaten here. There's been a physical assault here. And so it just feels like this is refreshing to hear that, oh, there is like a 60-year-old gay man who I have sat down with and we have talked, and we didn't talk about abuse. We talked about his life and what he enjoys about being queer, and any kind of advices he has for young queer people. It's refreshing to hear this from a trans woman too. So there is also that angle as well.
Yeah, it's definitely refreshing hearing just like the everyday lives and everyday experiences of our queer elders. And I know it's important to learn of what is happening and the challenges that queer folks face, but I think it's also just as important to just hear about just the everyday experiences, the queer joy, all of that, so that we and queer people, like marginalized folks, we have that sense of hope as well. So I
Yes, indeed.
definitely see where you're coming from.
Yes,
And
indeed.
what are some of the experiences of intersex and gender nonconforming people in Ghana?
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, when you take the intersex and gender non-conforming community, and I'm just going to like quietly chip in about the intersex,
Mm-hmm.
that right from birth, right from birth, the chances are already really tipped against that. And so it is of course no surprise to know that there are so many intersex people that couldn't even get an education. And you can't lead a movement if you can't speak English, especially like when English is the social language in Ghana. How do you communicate your feelings across if you can't, even if you can organize a community, how do you communicate, like the gay community does, and the broader LGBTQ community does in Ghana? But that's beside the point. My experience, me being an intersex, gender non-conforming person that is attracted to men, puts me in a very unique position to talk about these experiences. So there has been a lot of dynamic challenges when it comes to my lived experiences, and I hopefully the entire community that I share the same intersection with. Even within the LGBTQ community, there is and there has been still a lot of misconceptions, stigma when it comes to not only intersex people but also gender non-conforming people. So, and despite the fact that the queer community highlights a lot of challenges that they experience in Ghana, I think when you dig deeper, you would find that a lot of these challenges, intersex people, experience it like 10 times harder. And this is not me even trying to have an oppression Olympic, right? When you take like, say, a field like health, intersex people has all these problems, right? Face all this stigma, discrimination, and right from birth, there's this sense that you have to belong to a specific sex, right? And you have to be socialized in a specific gender. And so, right from birth, you don't even have a say in what you want to do. You are shoved there. So then you have intersex genital mutilation, where if you are born and say you possess both sexual organs, you are surgically, one of them is surgically removed, and you are forced to be socialized as the sex that the physician chooses for you. And it really doesn't matter if you grow and you want to identify with that particular gender or you don't, because of course, like being trans is criminalized in Ghana, you know. And now there is like the anti-LGBT bill that is like hopefully hoping to even criminalize it further. Then you come to sexual health discrimination, where intersex and gender non-conforming people, like me, for instance, I going into hospital is like a huge challenge for me, because there is this constant need by physicians to, prod, and nurses to look at you some way. And there's all these passive aggressive and microaggressive way that physicians treat you when they even remotely suspect that you might be queer. And unfortunately for intersex people, that is not something that we can hide, right? I mean, a gay person can just go to the hospital and it's not written on their face that they are gay. And so if it's a guy, as long as he isn't being effeminate, they know that this is like they get an ultimate treatment. But for an intersex person that was socialized as a girl and now transitions to be a boy, then you have the problem of going to a facility and the entire suspicion, and so the entire like discrimination that comes with walking into a facility as queer. And even apart from that, like there are also a lot of other economic issues that affect us for the intersections that we are in. Take employment, for instance. So recently I was sharing with a group of students that I spoke to about employment and how, despite graduating in from university in 2020, I have had over 7 jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and it hasn't been because I am terrible at my job, because I am not, or I get fired at my job because I don't. But the experience has always been one, whether like my coworkers consistently ask me if I am a boy or I'm a girl, or two, I have an instance where I go to the washroom to, pee, and then I have co-workers, colleagues try to take a look at my sex organ, you know.
Wow, that's horrible.
Yeah, so so already economically, people like me, people that for in my intersection don't do so well. There is also, of course, the lack of protections, and workplace policies that prevent these things. And even when you get a job, there's always the likelihood that you can get fired. And I have even had interviews where just by hearing my voice, I don't get a job. And, they tell me blatantly, and what can you do? You are in Ghana, laws don't really work, you know. And also, as I mentioned earlier, there's also education. So, of course, you can only look for a job if you have an education. And I think in Ghana, if I'm not being so loud, I am in a very privileged position because I should, of course, be one of the only few intersex people that has an education. So many of us, right from birth, because of either ambiguous genitalia or being forcefully shoved into a particular sex and socialized. Because of that, there isn't really a fitting in when it comes to school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is also a lot of kids, laughing at you and throwing all these things at you that sometimes you just give up. And so when you take the intersex community in general, we have so many of them that have the same story. And the story is, they used to laugh at me when I was in school, so I had to stop. They used to call me a hermaphrodite when I was in school, so I had to quit. So you have all these stories that come across, and it isn't very encouraging.
Yeah. And there's so much violence there. And even in queer spaces, sometimes there is still very much a binary thinking. And so it's like you're getting it from the non-queer spaces. And when you go into the queer spaces, that's supposed to be a refuge. Sometimes folks are still very much thinking in this binary way. That's very difficult and challenging. And I'm glad that you mentioned that you're part of an intersex community in Ghana.
So that is the intersex movement Ghana, the
Mm-hmm.
IMG. It is
IMG.
a
Mm-hmm.
collective of intersex people in Ghana that we are currently still organizing and putting ourselves together, because like we kind of was looking up to the larger community to fight for us, but it doesn't look like we're going to get that. So this is us coming together to even challenge some of the stereotypes and further stigmatization within the community that is supposed to be our safe space. So we are trying to challenge that, and at the same time we are also working against intersex phobia and all these bigger issues that face intersex people in the wider environment as well.
Yeah. So how does it feel like to just have, this collective where you can engage and talk to other intersex folks and just be in that community?
I mean, it is a really big deal for me.
Hmm.
And this is what I tell everyone. Um, I mean, 5 years ago, I had no idea this is where I was going to be. I had no idea I was going to be the one trying to, be a part of an intersex community. 5 years ago, I was going to be a medical doctor. I had all these dreams of being a medical doctor and getting married and having children. And today here I am. It gives me, I guess, what I am trying to say is that there is this sense of fulfillment and trying to do something,
Hmm.
working towards changing something. And also there is of course, the fact that because everybody in the intersex community, everybody at least to an extent shares in my experience, and I also share in their experience, there is a lot of acceptance. There is a lot of empathy. There is a lot of understanding. I get that a lot from within the intersex community, way more than I get outside the intersex community and even in the LGBTQ community. Within the intersex community, there are people that understand me more, and there is this sense of siblinghood that I see you and I love you. You are just as perfect as you are,
Yeah.
and like, I know your potential. You being intersex doesn't speak on anything that you are capable of. It doesn't speak on your capabilities. It doesn't speak on your intersex. I see you, and I love you, right?
Yeah.
So it just gives me, and it gives me family, a chosen family.
Yes, I love that chosen family and that kind of love and that support. It can be so transformational. And so
Yes,
that's
it is.
amazing. Yeah, that's definitely amazing. And so going back to the work that you're doing in documenting queer folks, and when I say queer, I don't only mean like, sexual orientation is queer. When I say queer, I don't know what I'll ask you that next actually, but usually when I say queer, and within this context, I mean outside of that norm, of that heteronormative mainstream, that kind of norm. And so let
Mm.
me ask that to you first. When you say queer, documenting queerness, what what kind of queerness are you documenting? What does queerness mean to you?
Thank you. Thank you. I laughed because recently there was like this huge debate on Twitter about queerness and how white people find being called white gay men find being called queer offensive, right? And like one of the debates that one of the conversation that I enjoyed most was this person telling him that you have no idea how much like queer blankets a lot of us,
Mm-hmm.
because in Ghana, for instance, if I am having a conversation with my friend in the street or in the bus, I can just say queer and nobody would understand it. Nobody in the bus would understand it. But I
Right. It's
can't say
like
gay.
code sometimes for protection.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I can't say gay. I can't say, lesbian woman. But I can say,
Mm-hmm.
oh, she's queer, right? Like I can't say she's a lesbian in a bus. And so when I talk about queerness, I am referring to the entire LGBTQ community, especially. So as much as possible, and sometimes as difficult as it gets, I love to document and listen to minorities within the queer community, because of course, like despite the fact that you won't hear a lot of gay stories or a lot of gay stories, yes, there still is quite a few out there. What you won't hear is trans elders. What you won't hear is intersex elders. You know, what you won't hear, especially in Ghana, is the story of someone that is asexual. So those are the kind of people that I love to sit down with and talk. Those are the kind of people that I love to listen to their stories and get them together. Lesbian couple, um, lesbian old people, like elders in the lesbian community. And so my definition for queerness and my documents and queerness is just like a blanket for the entire LGBTQ community, but especially without a G. Sorry, James.
Yeah. So you're shedding light on people that are more marginalized within the larger LGBTQIA plus community.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And so I know, so I've watched your videos that you put up and I love them on your YouTube channel. I know there was one where you talked about history of queerness and queer identities in Ghana. And then another one where you interviewed an older gay man, Ghanaian man. And
Yeah.
also I've seen your tweets and everything. So can you shed light on, like, I guess, the history aspect of things? Because I know that's something that you're trying to do as well.
So it hasn't been long since I started documenting queerness. And I think the idea of documenting queerness was born out of my work with Rightify Ghana. I remember in 2022, just before the end of the year. So 2022 was especially a very engaging year for me. Especially around June, July, August, I had like all these panels, speakerships, guest speakerships. And one thing I quickly realized was that any meeting that I was in, especially one that has like a lot of white people, came with this question like, oh, you live in Africa. How bad is it?
Oh
Oh,
God.
like, are you beating like every day? You know, and I kept reminding myself that there is more to me. There is more to my queerness than just abuse, right? And there has been this general construction over the years. And I think it is one of the things that made it very difficult for me to confront that I had a sexual attraction to men. um and that was because I constantly saw on social media how terrible gay people are treated. So you have a gay man that gets beaten, you have a gay man that does this, you have a gay man, and all of them are negative. And once I started working with Rightify Ghana, I realized a very, very common thread. And then you also have all these news, you have all these researches and all these things that come to Ghana, and it's always constantly around. How many times do you get beaten in a week? And so it just seemed like my pain and the pain of every other queer person has been commodified and sold as us. And outside us being seen from that lens, it just seemed like there wasn't any much to see anymore. So it's always queer people being tied to being beaten. It's always queer people being tied to being sad. It's always queer people being tied to being depressed, which is of course the case, but that is not the full picture. The full picture is that queer people also have brilliant lives. And I say this as a queer person that has lived in Ghana all my life, that has been in a relationship with men, that is surrounded by friends that are also queer, that queer people have a whole lot going on than just crying all day, than just getting beaten all day, right? Queer people laugh a lot. We have parties, we love friends, we have fruitful relationships, and we grow old, you
Mhm.
know. And so that was my decision at the end of 2022, that I was going to make a lot of conscious effort into highlighting and documenting these parts of queerness and queer people in Ghana and hopefully in Africa, because I think that is also a very similar picture you see about other queer people in other African countries. That was basically the idea. And I think so far, so good. Fingers crossed for what comes ahead in the future.
Yes, and I love it. And I can't wait to see more of your work. And just as a cultural worker and someone that's interested in like people's processes and how they produce culture and how they work on their craft, I'm just really interested. What's the usual process when you're going to talk to different queer folks, going to talk to different queer elders?
Um, thank you. So I think it first starts with the entire ideation, putting it on paper what I want to do, and so like I keep my phone very close to me, because sometimes like in the shower I can get this idea that what if maybe I sit down with an asexual elder, you know what if maybe I want to speak to this person? It's like I just quickly either record myself or write it down. And then the next is how to actually get a person.
Yeah.
That is huge. That is like this is one of my biggest challenges. But after that, then I just have to make the preparations. Of course, the person cannot come to me. I have to go to the person. So I have to arrange accommodation. I have to arrange logistics, and then I go. When
Mhm.
I go, I have to make sure that I meet the person in a very safe and secure environment where we can talk, and there won't be any issues afterwards. And the meeting is usually in the person's community, right?
Mhm.
And then so I like my conversations to be very natural, my interviews to come like a very natural conversation. So there isn't really a lot of script. There isn't any script. I just ask you and you tell me. So can you tell me your name? How has living as a queer person been like? And the conversation just goes on from there, and it's usually always a lot of worlds of experiences and actually living, and it just sometimes feels like reading a very vivid book or watching like a very beautiful movie.
Aw, I love that. like watching a beautiful movie. Yes, I love that. And that is amazing. And like you're going all over Ghana, right? And you're
Yes.
even, I think you had mentioned pre-interview that you're trying to go to different countries in Africa as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the goal.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. And like, how can we support you with this mission and this goal?
For now, my biggest issue has been financing. I have been financing this out of pocket, and it comes from my very meager monthly salary. And I'm also in school, of course, so I pay fees, and then I have to use the rest to fund my trips. So I have set up a GoFundMe account, a GoFundMe that I am hoping to raise some funds to support specifically documenting queerness. So any form of contributions will come in very helpful, because apart from the entire logistics, traveling, I think I also need help with, in terms of humans. I do all of these things by myself. I travel all by myself. There is, of course, a safety and security issue there. There is also, when I go to have my interviews, I double as an interviewer and someone that shoots videos, a videographer.
Yeah.
And then when I come home, I have to be a video editor, and then go do a YouTube and be a transcriptor for my YouTube, and then post it. And so
Yeah.
it's a huge
It's a
load of
lot.
work. Yeah.
Hmm.
And recently I was just speaking to a friend. I was telling him, honestly, I've been through all my savings. Um, I can hardly get sleep. And I only have the chance to do this on the weekend. So sometimes I travel, I take like a 14-hour drive to somewhere very far, and I have to get back before Monday. So I go to the interview, and right after that, I am on the road again back to where I live. So I don't even know why I am doing it. And then I just remind myself about the kind of stories that I am hearing, and
Yeah.
that gives me the motivation to keep doing it. So I just feel like if I have the financial support that I can use to get extra help and get better equipment, because like I shoot all my videos from my phone.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I also use a very simple, I think I bought approximately $5 microphone. Those are the only two equipment that I use. So if
Hmm.
I can, get a lot more video shooting stuff, like a tripod stand, or even a camera that I can use to shoot, and then I can get help like with one person and maybe some support for logistics as well. So right now, I mean, that is my biggest issue, apart from the safety and security and personal attacks and homophobia that comes with posting of these stories online.
Yeah, like I understand. I feel you on that because it's hard doing everything on your own. And it's like we're not supposed to be doing everything on our own, A lot of these things, um, it's very helpful when you have like a community so that you're not easily burnt out because something can be on your heart. It could be a passion project, labor of love. But when you're facing certain challenges or you don't have the support that you need, it can be a little bit difficult. But
Yeah.
I know you post like kind of the support you need. You tell people about the support you need on your social media, right? So can you
Yeah.
tell people where they can find your work and learn more about like what kind of support you need?
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel. Originally it was just going to be me posting on Twitter. And then I realized that I wanted to do this permanently. And if I was going to do this permanently, I was going to need a repository to, store these important documenting. And so I set up a YouTube channel. Anyone can check it out. It's called Documenting Queerness, and I also have a GoFundMe that anyone can donate to if they want to support my work. I currently have, I think, a very few videos on the YouTube channel, but there's going to be a lot more uploaded soon, and I mean very soon, because I am working on all of them and I'm also preparing for exams. So
Oh, yeah. Balancing them. Yeah. And you're also on Twitter.
Yes, actually, I am also quite active on Twitter. My username is Papa Kojo Ampofo. So if anyone want to follow my work, that is usually the first place that I announce that I have posted a new content. So if anyone want to follow my work, they can just give me a follow. Turn on notifications, or they can also subscribe to the YouTube and turn on notifications as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Papa Kojo. Like, I can't wait to see, more of what you produce. I'm really excited to see the conversation, seeing more conversations. So thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me. You are welcome. Thank you so much.
Yes, and for everyone, I'm going to post the Papa Kojo's information in the episode notes so you can check it out there. Thank you for listening to today's episode, and don't forget to follow Asase on Instagram, Twitter, X, and TikTok at asasebapod. And check out our website at asasebapod.com for curated resources on traditional spiritualities, queer identities, and cultural work. I'll be back in 2 weeks for a brand new episode. Later. Bye.